Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about some of the common topologies that we see with wide area networks. Okay, so before I get started, these topologies kind of intermingle with some of the different types of WAN access options, and even within the transport or WAN infrastructure itself. Yeah, you'll see these different topologies referred to in later videos is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. So let's start with the point-to-point topology. Exactly what it says. It employs a point-to-point connection or circuit between two endpoints. Typically, we can see this with dedicated leased lines. When we talk about wide area networks, such as a T1 or E1 line. By the way, T1s are very slow, but we'll talk more about T1s. It's actually, we think of T1s nowadays when we're talking about a certain digital hierarchy. Although T1s themselves are kind of not outdated, but we have much faster circuits nowadays. Okay, anyway, that's a point-to-point link. We'll see this when we talk about things like PPP and HDLC, also frame relay, ATM, and even Ethernet. Full mesh. What full mesh is, whether we're using direct circuits or virtual circuits. We'll talk more about that a little later as well, what the difference is. Direct circuit is just really more of a physical line. A virtual circuit is the provider makes it look like we have a physical connection between two endpoints. But anyway, full mesh is when any two sites can directly communicate with each other. I'll show more of that in a moment. The disadvantage of this is the large number of direct or virtual circuits that needed to be configured, maintained, and paid for. Okay, so let's say we have, looks like I have 2, 4, 6, 8 nodes here. Let's say I want to have a full mesh between all 8. So first of all, I'll set up the connectivity from A to everybody, then B to everybody, C to everybody, D to everybody, E, F, and then G. So as you can see, that's a lot of connections, and there's actually a little formula that I show there. You can take the number of nodes minus 1 times the number of nodes and divide that by 2, and it gives you the total number of connections. So you can see that actually, for 2 connections, you have 2 nodes. You're going to have one, this is PVC, permanent virtual circuit, excuse me. So I just A and B have 1 connection between them. If I have 4, I'm going to have 4 connections. 6, 15, 8, 28 connections, 10, 45. So it kind of scales exponentially. All right. So how do we get around that? So by the way, so we'd see this a lot we talked about this earlier, and we'll talk about it in more detail later, but with leased lines. You can also do this, have full mesh with frame relay. But in both cases, you're paying for those circuits. Where they are dedicated circuits with all these are each a dedicated, a leased line that you're paying for, or within the frame relay provider's network, they set up these, they call them virtual circuits, between every pair of nodes. You're paying for that, and that's a lot of connections. So using technologies like frame relay and ATM, both of which are pretty much legacy nowadays, we can set up things called hub spoke, where we have a single interface to the provider. And in this case here, the hub device is connected directly with each spoke. The spokes cannot communicate directly with each other. If spoke A wanted to talk to spoke C, they would actually have to go through the hub to get there. So all the spoke sites are interconnected through the hub with their connection to the hub. using either virtual circuits, or could even do this with dedicated circuits, dedicated leased lines as well. And I mentioned about all traffic having to go through the hub. That is a potential disadvantage if you need your spokes to be able to talk to each other directly. Okay? And again, we see this typically with frame relay, ATM, X25, all three, which are legacy. But you can do similar types of things with leased lines as well. And here's another way of looking at it. Here we have the access circuits. In this case here, we're pretending this is a frame relay provider, providing the virtual circuits and making the connections look like a hub spoke topology. All right, this last one, the Cisco Academy curriculum calls this a topology. I kind of don't really think of this as a topology, dual homed. So I don't really think of this as any kind of special topology. It's really, dual homing is really just more of a different type of design that provides both redundancy and load balancing when you have multiple service providers. So let me kind of let me kind of go through this. So there we go. Let me use my pen here. It's when you have like a single company here, and you might have multiple providers. This is kind of a weird way to look at it with these dashed lines. I really don't like this diagram, but usually dual homed is associated with, matter of fact, let me kind of use the whiteboard here. I think I can do a little bit better job. Okay, so you have your company here. So this is your company. And you might have multiple internet service providers. Okay, so we have ISP1, ISP2, and ISP3. Okay, what dual homing is when you're actually connecting to multiple service providers. Okay, now this could be done with 3 separate routers, or actually could be done with a single router. Okay, this is what is known as dual homing. You are getting so we got the internet out here, and these are different internet service providers. So you are connecting to the internet, not using one internet service provider, but more than one. And let me talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so as I mentioned here, it's not really a topology, it's more of a design consideration. Provides redundancy and load balancing. So typically in this scenario here, you'd be running BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, with the 3 different providers. Spelling mistake there. May require additional networking hardware, including routers and switches. Not necessarily. You could do this with a single router. Again, it's a design consideration. Can be more difficult to implement. Not necessarily, but typically when you're wanting to do this, you're wanting to have more control over the traffic, what traffic you want to send to different parts of the internet, whether you want to go through spoke A. Let's really think of these as ISPs. ISP A, ISP B, or ISP C. How do you want to reach Google? How do you want to reach Facebook? How do you want to reach your branch offices? And how do you want people to reach you? And so anyway, talk a lot about this in my CCNP routing classes when we talk about BGP. Okay, all right. So that's just a little bit about the different topologies. You'll be hearing much more about those as we talk about different WAN technologies.